the Director of Division of Emergency Management, Josie Tamayo, Chief Executive Officer of Volunteer Florida, Gracia Check from FEMA, Jim Eifert, Florida National Guard, and John Ferner, President and Chief Executive Officer of Walmart US. So welcome to Florida. We're happy that you're here. I just got back from surveying the damage in Charlotte and Lee counties. And, some of the damage was, almost indescribable to see a house just sitting in the middle of Estero Bay. Literally must have gotten picked up, flown because of the massive wind speed and the storm surge, and deposited in a body of water. There was cars floating in the middle of the water. Some of the homes were total losses. I would say the most significant damage that I saw was on Fort Myers Beach. Some of the homes were wiped out, and some of it was just concrete slabs. Of course, there were damage to some of our infrastructure, particularly the Sanibel Causeway. There were breaks in that in multiple different areas. It was interesting. The pylons on the water where you had that part of the bridge, that actually was good. It was the point where it was on a sandbar that just got totally wiped away, or from the mainland, there was breaks there. So that's going to require major overhaul and potentially a complete rebuild. They're going to look at it and see. That's the only way on Sanibel and Captiva Island. So the operations to help people there have been mostly by air. In all told, search and rescue operations, it started in the wee hours of the morning. As soon as the winds died down enough to where it was safe, you had Coast Guard assets, you had urban search and rescue teams. We've had the National Guard out assisting people. There have been more than 700 confirmed rescues, and there's likely many more than that that will be confirmed as more data comes in. People have been rescued from places like Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Marco Island, as well as the barrier islands in Charlotte County. Obviously, there was a lot of calls coming in as the storm was really raging yesterday. People who did not evacuate were hunkered down. There was storm surge. There was a lot of apprehension, understandably. When initially the first responders came this morning, people would wave them down, whether they were by helicopter, boat, or high water vehicle. Now what they're finding is on places like Sanibel, most of the residents are just waving thank you for coming, but they say that they're fine and that they're staying put. Now, I think that there's going to be issues with being on some of those islands because they're not going to have services like we expect for quite some time, given the limitations of transportation. But nevertheless, that's a sign that some of the folks who did ride it out are stabilized in their home. First responders are doing targeted searches, just going home by home, checking to see if people are okay, and then responding to specific reports if they're missing loved ones. There will, of course, be many more rescues that are added to the tiller. Now, we absolutely expect to have mortality from this hurricane, but I'll just caution people, there's a process by where that is confirmed, and there's people, I know that people have said certain things. In terms of confirmed, that will be made apparent over the coming days. But I think the things that have been said out there, that is not something that has been confirmed at this juncture. Of course, we have thousands and thousands of people on the ground working to restore power, opening the roads, bringing in food and water, and restoring communications. Talking with local folks in Lee County, probably the biggest immediate hurdle that they're facing is their county water utility had a big water main break. That is necessary to be fixed in order to provide basic water services for the residents of the county. So they have been working to troubleshoot it. They requested the state to enlist federal support to help diagnose and potentially fix the problem. So we worked with FEMA and Gracia, and the Army Corps of Engineers came in. I mean, they came in pretty early. I think Kevin called them maybe like 3 in the morning. They were in Southwest Florida from Jacksonville by early this afternoon. And so they're helping to diagnose and hopefully be able to remedy that. But that's going to be something that's very, very important for the county to get fixed. In the meantime, we are assisting healthcare facilities to provide working water because they need that to be able to take care of their patients. We're shuttling water from Lakeland into healthcare facilities. Right now, there are about 20 trucks en route with 60,000 gallons of water for a total of 1.2 million gallons of water. And I think they have been able to fix some of the water-ish. One of the 3 hospitals has actually been able to fix the water problem there. So that's good news. Port Tampa, Port Everglades, the fuel is flowing into some of our major ports. And so you're seeing a lot of fuel now flowing throughout the state. More than 330,000 gallons of fuel have already been moved in to Southwest Florida. I actually saw a couple of the gas stations open in the Fort Myers area when we were there today. With this fuel, the state of Florida set up 6 fuel depots to fully support all first response efforts. And we think the remaining ports in the state of Florida will open between sometime tomorrow and sometime on Saturday. There's been a massive amount of supplies staged. We're also bringing more into the region, more ambulances, more food, water, and ice, more generators, more. Actually, we're bringing in 2 full-service mechanical shops to help to repair and maintain emergency vehicles, which, they're in rugged conditions when you're going through water and others. Bringing in more tarps, bringing in kits for parents of infants and toddlers to give them 10 days worth of support, and bringing in more high water ladders. Now, as of 6 p.m., there are 2.6 million approximately reported power outages throughout the state of Florida, and that was anticipated. So far, compared to this morning, 200,000 accounts have been restored in Southwest Florida, 28,000 in Lee, 62,000 in Sarasota, 14,000 in Collier, 33,000 in Manatee, 12,000 in Charlotte, and 44,000 in Hillsborough have been restored. Of course, the pre-staging for this was over 42,000 linemen, so they're there on the ground, really in different parts of the state, but particularly in Southwest Florida. When they first got in there, of course, they're looking to see what is the damage, how much of our infrastructure has been destroyed, how much of it has held up. And I can tell you, when we were in Charlotte, the reports were generally positive that a lot of that infrastructure had been able to weather the storm. You still have to work, obviously, to reconnect the power, but in some areas you may need to rebuild from the ground up. In other areas where the infrastructure maintained integrity, you would be more just trying to rehook everything. So that's a 24/7 process. So if anybody sees some of the utility trucks pulled over somewhere and maybe someone getting rest, understand they're working constant shifts and everyone's on the clock the whole time, and they don't actually ever have a time where people are not working. So we really appreciate that because we understand how important it is for folks to have those basic services resume. There have, of course, been damages to cell phone towers, particularly in places like Lee County. The telecom companies have brought in, they earmarked 100 cell phone towers being set up, and many of those are being set up in Southwest Florida. I've been able to speak with the CEOs of both AT&T and T-Mobile. While there have been damages, a lot of their infrastructure has weathered the storm fairly well. So while there may need to be repairs, they feel good about getting up service. And I know some people do have service in those areas, and we were able to see that. FDOT had more than 1,200 personnel on the ground, and I'm happy to report the road situation is by and large really good. I think if I was just talking with Kevin before we came out here, if we were here yesterday at like noon, thinking about what the road situation would look like, I think we thought that there would have been way more roads that were blocked by debris. Of course, we did have the Sanibel. I mean, there are issues, but there is also a lot of roads where the traffic is flowing on I-75 without a problem, and most of the other roads are doing really well. Sunshine Skyway Bridge has reopened, and so we were happy to see that. Most school districts throughout the state will be reopening either Friday or Monday. Obviously, Lee and some of those areas may be a little bit different calculation for them. We're thankful that FEMA has activated individual assistance for Floridians who've been affected by this storm. If you are in need of help recovering, visit disasterassistance.gov or call 1-800-621-3362. FEMA has approved our request to add some of the Central Florida counties into the individual assistance. Kevin will have more details on that, but we appreciate that because You look at the images, like you can see a house that's been totaled on Fort Myers Beach, and obviously it's a very sad thing to see. You can see boats that have been flipped over or cars that have been flipped over, and those are very striking images. But as the storm has moved through the state, it has caused a lot of problems with really historic flooding in parts of Central Florida and into Northeast Florida. And so it's important that those folks also have the ability to get assistance if they need it. Over 8,700 people have already registered with FEMA. If you're gonna make a claim, take a picture. If you've had flooding, take a picture of the water line on your house. Make sure you're documenting the damage. Jimmy Petronis, our chief financial officer, is going to be doing insurance villages at these disaster recovery sites. So if you go in, now you don't need to go in to get FEMA assistance. You can do it online. But if you have questions, you go in. You can have people from the different insurance carriers. Jimmy's also going to help people who have NFIP flood policies to be able to file those claims and get those claims paid as soon as possible. And we expect that will be done without much delay from the insurance carriers. We're happy that a lot of businesses have committed to provide our first responders and volunteers with sustenance. Culver's, Firehouse Subs, Burger King, Four Rivers Smokehouse, Anna Maria Oyster Bar, and Texas Roadhouse, and we think many, many more will want to come and also offer assistance. For those who are coming in as either first responders or linemen, Buc-ee's is giving away meals and soft drinks. If you stop in their Daytona location, you'll be able to avail yourself of some really good stuff there. We're continuing, as Kevin has said, these first 72 hours are really life safety, and then working to restore the main services, power, fuel, and communications. And there's massive numbers of people on the ground working 24/7 to do that. Of course, it's too early to know exactly what the needs of everybody is going to be, but we obviously anticipate some Floridians may end up being displaced from their homes, and the First Lady is spearheading efforts with Volunteer Florida to activate the Florida Disaster Fund, where people can donate. And it's much better to donate financially than to send items, and we really appreciate the thought when people want to send water, they want to send these things, but Florida DEM and others have been contracted for this, so this stuff is there. The best thing you can do if you're going to give a financial contribution, that can go to some of these organizations that are a little bit more nimble with how they help people. FEMA, Gracia will say, you have statutes and you have regulations and you have things. You either qualify for certain types of individual assistance or you don't. They're not able to go outside of what Congress has decreed on that. A private organization, if you have more unique needs that maybe aren't covered by that program, they can meet those needs. And so providing the cash assistance is the best way to do that. If you want to contribute, go to www.floridadisasterfund.org or text disaster to 2022. Actually, what is it? It's more than 20222. Okay, well, I'll let the First Lady do that because she does it better than me. They put text to 2022 on this, and that I know it's more than that. I'm not a text guy, but I do know you need more numbers than that. All right, for those who want to come volunteer in person, that's another way where you can really be helpful. And Volunteer Florida has a website for that, www.volunteerflorida.org, if you want to see volunteer opportunities. And we would certainly welcome individuals that want to give, obviously, their money, but also their personal time and effort. Okay, Kevin Guthrie's here with some additional updates.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, First Lady, for your going out to the area today and doing some on-site assessments. We're entering that phase of the response where we start to really get into what's referred to as indirect deaths. Myself and the Governor have been mentioning this now for quite some time: generator safety, generator safety, generator safety. Now we're going to start adding chainsaw safety, getting on ladders, getting on roofs, watching out for power lines that are mixed inside of trees. People need to be extremely careful. If you do not know how to use a chainsaw, if you do not know how to climb a ladder, if you do not know what the difference is between a cable line and a power line, you should not be doing that. Leave that to the professionals. Again, as the Governor indicated 2 days ago, we have significantly more indirect deaths from disasters that are 100% avoidable than we do the disaster itself. So please be safe. Drone pilots. We're starting to have some issues with drone pilots in areas. Please do not operate your drones in the areas where we have military aircraft, search and rescue aircraft working. When you go in there with their drone or your drone, they have to stop working. Please stay out of the area and let us do our job. Similarly, we saw it down in Fort Myers today. People are wanting to go out and look at the damage. For every car that's going down a street, that's preventing a power line crew from getting in there and working. It's preventing a search and rescue crew from getting in there and working. Please stay outside these areas so that we can get in there. Power outages are being restored. The governor read through a laundry list of individuals that are having power restored. We did hear a question earlier today about, well, it's still 2.6 million. It was 2.6 million this morning. Jacksonville has been hit. We have power outages in Duval County, St. Johns County, Nassau County, Baker County. So those are going to offset here for a little while. FPL, the Municipal Electric Association and its municipal electric partners, the cooperative electric programs are getting their stuff turned back on. Please be patient. We have every faith and trust in them to restore the power. However, in places where we're going to have to rebuild infrastructure, that's going to take longer, as the governor mentioned. Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Pine Island, that's going to take some time. In those areas, we do have some other challenges. There's potentially vehicles in the water, there are potentially boats in the water, there is potentially debris in the water. We will be working with our federal partners to mission assign or ask their request and mission assign special resources to go in there and start looking under the water to do an underwater survey to ensure that we can actually get the necessary barges and heavy equipment into those areas to respond effectively. I think this is an appropriate time to say, Gracia, thank you very much for all your assistance. Admiral McPherson as well as the TAG, General Eifert, has been with me since day one, sitting here. He was there at 0700, which means he had to leave St. Augustine at 04 something. Thank you very much. We continue to mobilize additional resources to impacted areas. Specifically today, we did more than 400 bottles of oxygen, 100 ambulances, an additional 120 utility trucks, 4 mobile triage units. These are specific units to help triage patients if somebody becomes injured. We do have hospitals that have some issues and cannot intake patients. So this is the ability to triage individuals for that. 60 truckloads of water, 40 truckloads of meals, 40 truckloads of ice. That was a question earlier a couple of days ago. We have brought in additional pet foods, supplies for displaced pets. 5 truckloads of blankets, 5 truckloads of cots, and I believe this was requested earlier by someone, nearly 100,000 tarps. FDM recovery staff are now beginning the process of rapid damage assessments in the impacted counties to expedite all available federal assistance for the disaster recovery. The governor mentioned earlier that additional counties have been added to the Category A debris removal expedited project or expedited declaration and IA or individual assistance. Those counties are Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Polk. Again, these counties are available for 30 days at 100% in federal assistance. I am going to turn to Gracia and ask, what is that website that we need to direct everyone to for mobile intake?
For registration.
For registration.
For survivors, it is disasterassistance.org.
Disasterassistance.org. So again, we're proud that 8,700 people have already done that, and we want to continue to do as much as we can via web registration. Again, Governor, First Lady, thank you so much for your leadership today.
Okay, First Lady.
All right, well, flying over the devastation and destruction firsthand, all I can say is, our hearts and our prayers are with so many people who are suffering, which is why about 24 hours ago, we launched the Disaster Relief Fund. And I'm happy to say that after 24 hours, we have raised more than $10 million into that fund. And if you remember this morning, just at 8 o'clock, 8 a.m., we came out here and we talked with you. I think it was at 1.6 million. So now we're over $10 million. So I just want to say thank you to all of the great Floridians who stepped up to support our efforts, and all of the people across the country who are helping Floridians. Thank you. We are going to make a big difference to help get resources immediately to those people who need them most. Amazon, we want to thank them. Centene, Ian McKetney, Florida Blue, Lanier, Walmart, we'll be hearing from them in just a second, donated $1 million. Boeing, Publix, Simply Healthcare, Airbnb, Tico Energy, Wells Fargo, Verizon, CVS, Duke Energy, Goldman Sachs, Rumble, Florida Power and Light, National Christian Foundation, the PGA Tour, and Horn, just to name a few. And that doesn't even go into all of the donations that came in from people who are giving $5 and $10. And thank you so much for what you're doing. Also want to say thank you to Tom Brady, who put on his website a special shout out to the defense, or to our fund, the Florida Disaster Fund, that got a lot of attention and raised a lot of money. So thank you for your support of your community. Also, thank you to Visa, Amex, PayPal, and Braintree. They are waiving their fees, so all of this money will go directly to servicing the people in need. And again, as the governor mentioned, one of the important things to understand about this fund and why it's so important is because we are getting needs instantaneously into the EOC, into the Emergency Operations Center. And so we're able then to communicate those needs to those nonprofits on the ground so we can meet them quickly. And so these funds make a big difference to help micro-target what we're seeing. And again, when we are flying over Lee County and some of these areas that were just devastated, they are going to need things like foods and tarps and what have you. And so what is not being supplemented by the state, which is a lot, we will be able to do in the private sector. So again, to give the website, floridadisasterfund.org, and you can also text disaster to 20222. And God bless you and thank you for your support.
Okay. All right, Volunteer Florida, Josie Tamayo.
Good evening, everyone, and I want to thank you on behalf for being here. And first of all, I want to thank, the First Lady and the Governor for their leadership in this. And I must say it is a record amount of money that we have now received for the disaster fund. And I want to thank, obviously, our partners, our corporate partners. I will say to you, we have been on the phone calling people, and they have been giving to people in Florida specifically with needs, and we plan to make very good use of that money. And I want to thank each and every person that has reached out, called, and specifically for those in the storm's path that are now recovering. And so these funds will go for response and recovery. We will be doing that, looking at all of that very carefully. And I want to thank our corporate partners, specifically Walmart, who has, in fact, Ms. Moni Brown is on our foundation. And this fund is administered through our Volunteer Florida Foundation. So on behalf of everyone, I want to thank you all for being, specifically want to thank the First Lady for her leadership on this, and the Governor, and everyone who is called in need. And please, I want to tell you, if you want to volunteer, please go to our website at volunteerflorida.org. We have someone standing by that can connect you with nonprofits that are in need of volunteers, and also www.floridadisasterfund.org, or text disaster to 20222. And I will say there will be a banner at the FSU football game this weekend with our Florida Disaster Fund, and also USF has agreed to do that. And in my mind, I'm going to get every college team to do that in Florida as long as we need them. Thank you so much, and thank you, First Lady and Governor.
Okay, we're happy to have John Furner, President and Chief Executive Officer of Walmart.
Good evening, and thank you, Governor and First Lady, for coming together today, and also for your team's quick response following just the devastation that we're seeing from the hurricane. So I'm proud to be with you here in Florida tonight, representing Walmart, to further discuss how Walmart will continue partnering with all of you and your team while we continue to respond to the devastation of the storm. Supporting communities is core to Walmart, and Florida is our community. Many of our associates, customers, and members all across Florida are feeling the effects of the extensive damage caused by this storm. And like all of you, we've been closely monitoring its track to ensure that we stay in tune with what our stores, our clubs, our supply chain teams need to be doing to serve before, during, and after the storm. So in preparation for the response and recovery, we've strategically placed things like generators, refrigerated trailers, merchandise, and additional personnel in the right locations to give us the best opportunity to resume operations as soon as it's safe to do so. We have 385 stores and clubs here in Florida, 9 distribution centers, and at one point today, 244 of those were closed. And we think over the next day or so, we'll have the majority of those back open and operating. So we've helped relocate associates living in mandatory evacuation zones, and we're carrying out wellness checks for those living in the other impacted areas. Now, throughout all of this, our thoughts and our prayers remain with those who are impacted, and we are moving quickly to help. To that end, on behalf of Walmart, Sam's Club, and the Walmart Foundation, I'm announcing our commitment of up to $6 million for recovery and relief efforts. And this level of support does include, First Lady now, a $1.5 million investment to support the Florida Disaster Fund, donations of essential supplies, and grants to local and national organizations who are here on the ground supporting relief efforts. Now, what we do know is Walmart customers, members, and our associates are the most general people that we know. And as part of this investment, we're also launching a national customer and member giving campaign at our stores and clubs, and an associate donation campaign through Walmart's Associate Giving Program. And we understand our responsibility to the communities we serve, and will proudly work side by side with each and every one of you to ensure we're doing everything we can along with our first responders to restore our communities as quickly as possible. And this includes mobilizing resources and services to those people who need them. So as a company and as fellow Floridians, when our friends, our neighbors, and our loved ones need help, we will gladly step forward to support them. Thank you.
Okay, so we're very much monitoring the impacts that we're seeing in other parts of the state other than Southwest Florida, and I know Kevin is working on. We're going to obviously have a big response in Southwest Florida, but when you talk about FEMA, some of these other things, there's going to be a need to be response in some of these other parts of the state on an individual basis, and so I know he's working on that. And we're going to be back down in all these areas and working hard to make sure that we can get people back on their feet. And with that, I'll take some questions.
Governor, I know that a lot of people are questioning what the casualty count is, and I know you addressed it, but is the state at least preparing for a large casualty situation, given what we heard from the Lee County Sheriff as well as the President earlier today?
Well, I mean, I think it's a massive storm. I mean, I think we anticipate casualties. I think Kevin made a good point about how many are going to happen from the time it hits on. We've stressed to try to minimize both, obviously, but we're now in the situation where there's going to be hazards out where people can be in harm's way still. Just because the storm is past does not mean that there's not additional hazards. Operating things like generators, standing. Now, fortunately, I was looking, there wasn't as much standing water as I was anticipating. I think that the storm surge that they had feared in Charlotte, while they did get water, there was flooding. I don't think it was at quite the level that was initially feared. Obviously, in Lee, you had a massive storm surge at the barrier islands. You did have some on the mainland, but I saw the roads by and large clear. There were a couple roadways where I saw where there was water. So hopefully some of those hazards are minimized. I think if you look at the most significant storm in the history of Florida was Okeechobee in the 20s, and you guys can look it up. But I mean, I don't think we would be anywhere approaching that.
We've heard, just anecdotally from various local officials, the total would be about 16 people right now dead. You're not confirming that. But I'm wondering, as you're getting out to these barrier islands now, are you getting people off these islands? You are not finding massive numbers of dead people on these islands?
That is correct. I think but at the same time, they're going to see people that may be visibly in need or knocking on doors, and most of them are saying, I'm fine. If there's no answer, I don't know that they're going into those homes. Now, many of those homes are vacation homes and seasonal residents, so we'll see. Now, there are so what will be confirmed as storm related, that will happen, relatively soon. I can tell you that there have been some non-storm related fatalities as well. I mean, for example, in Charlotte County, they reported a suicide during the storm. They also had somebody pass away from a heart attack because you don't have access to emergency services for a certain period of time. And so that could have been somebody, that would have gone to the hospital. So there's a lot of those things. They're working through it, and we'll see. But I can say, I think, Kevin, there's not been in these rescue efforts, deceased people found as of yet. Now that may change, of course, as they do more. But they've been able to lift a lot of people out of those islands, and I know a lot of those people have been happy. But increasingly, there are people who are happy that people are out there looking out for them, but say thank you, we're good. I don't know that is necessarily they're going to want to do that over the long term, because if there's structural damage for some of the underlying services, it's just going to take a little longer for the utilities to be able to get that up and running. But nevertheless, that's the posture a lot of them have taken.
Can you give us a sense, to that point, can you give us a sense of what recovery is going to look like in the hardest hit areas, especially in Lee County, it sounds like? Are we talking about, displacement for months and months on end? Are they going to be able to, are they going to have to send their kids to different schools? Are there schools that are just not going to be able to open for
Well, I think they're all still assessing that. I think that they're looking to see exactly how many people are going to be displaced. Clearly, you have some homes that were a total loss. There's no question about that. How many of those were rental homes? How many of those were permanent residents? I think people are still looking at how many of those were seasonal homes for seasonal residents. I think they're sorting all of that out. As more people come forward, they are keeping the shelters open in Lee County in case people have been displaced and they need a place to stay. Obviously, with FEMA offering individual assistance, people who are going to need housing assistance are going to be able to sign up and get that. So I think you'll have a better sense at that point. But my sense would be just kind of looking at it. Sanibel had some serious destruction and a lot of destruction on some of the underlying infrastructure, which is obviously important. I mean, they used to not have a bridge there. It would take like a ferry back and forth. Now you're back to kind of before that causeway was there. Fort Myers Beach, really, really serious damage. Some of the other places, when you're in a helicopter looking over, I see the homes are intact. I didn't see massive debris in some of the neighborhoods, but you also don't know how much flood damage that they had, because that water could have been 4 feet at this time yesterday, and then it subsided. And so that will all be things I think that people will determine as the days go on. But I think the folks in Lee, are prepared for some level of displacement. And I know Kevin has worked and FEMA's worked on some solutions, but I don't know that we know exactly how many. Kevin, do you want to add about what you're seeing so far?
So I agree with the governor wholeheartedly on the damage assessment so far. And again, this is aerial damage assessment, flying into the area, flying around, a little bit of the ground transportation that we were doing. I will just add to it, the next step in this recovery process is we will, I say we in support of the local counties will open up points of distribution where we will have food, water, potentially ice, depending on the situation. And I want to manage that expectation. Ice is usually given to help keep cold medications cold. So if that's the situation, you will be given ice. We will be providing tarps to those counties that have requested tarps so that they can do some emergency repairs. We are looking at turning on a program called the Blue Roof Program, which is slightly different than a tarp through FEMA. And I'm sure FEMA will action that over to the U.S. Army Corps. The next phase of that is going to be the disaster recovery centers that we will open up in the individual counties. This is a place where, again, as the governor has mentioned before, we will team up with the CFO's office to have insurance villages. We will team up with individuals like Department of Economic Opportunity to come in and help people with small business situations. We will team with the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, the Department of Health, vital records, ID cards, driver's licenses, and things like that have been lost. And the other state agency that's helped us out, there's a laundry list of Human Services, Department of Elder Affairs, Veterans Affairs, Children's and Families, and so on. So all of those will start to be set up over the next probably week or so. It just all depends on when we can get water restored to Lee County and the impacted area, and when we can get power restored to the impacted area. As those things happen, we'll move in very quickly with recovery services. I don't want to steal it from the governor, but the governor will be dispatching me to the area. We talked about this on the plane. I will probably be down in the area, in the most impacted area, for probably 30 days or more to ensure that the recovery is being handled effectively and remove any type of bureaucratic issues that might be going on.
Governor, you've been in frequent conversation with the White House during this devastating time for Florida. What does it look like when the president comes to town? What's your plan?
I don't know if he's announced he's coming or not. I know that the FEMA administrator, she will be here tomorrow, if not today. And so we'll be working. I don't know if she's planning on traveling with us on all our itinerary, but she's welcome to do that. We're going to be back down in Southwest Florida, but we're also working to see other impacted areas throughout the state to go and potentially visit, meet with folks and see what they need. So, at the end of the day, I view this as something that you got folks that are in need, and local, federal, state, we have a responsibility to work together. I tell you, the way the locals have worked really hard, I mean, it's been really impressive to watch because this is not an easy thing to deal with. It's also not an easy thing when you have forecasts all over the map and you're not necessarily sure where it's going. Naples and Fort Myers were out of the cone 72 hours before the storm actually made landfall. And as that changed, they pivoted and they put their plans in action. So it's been really good. And obviously, Kevin and his team have done a great job. I mean, having so many things pre-positioned. But every request we've asked from FEMA has been approved. So we appreciate that, and we want to make sure.
So you would plan on seeing him while he's in town, no matter when it is?
Is he coming?
From what I understand, he will be here tomorrow.
Okay. Did you know that? Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. With the FEMA administrators here, maybe, so we'll see. But I mean, at the end of the day, we want all the support that we can get because we understand that there's a lot of need out there, and these are good communities. The thing is these are resilient folks. These are really, really good folks down there, and they will bounce back. But we just need to make sure that we can kind of pave the way for them. All right, we'll see you guys in the morning. Thank you.